everyone. I'm Carlota Pico from the Content Mix, and I'm excited to be here today with Ross O'Neill, who is EMEA Senior Account-Based Marketing Manager at Cloudera, which is a computer software company, and he also has 15 years of experience in marketing and communications. Welcome, Ross, and thank you so much for joining us today on the Content Mix.
Hi, thank you. It's great to be here.
Our pleasure. I can't wait to learn all about your experience and journey so far. Okay, to get this interview started off, I would like to ask you a little bit about your background, a bit about Cloudera, and also how you got into your current role.
Yeah, sure. So I think, as you mentioned, I've been working in marketing for a fair time. I joined Cloudera 4.5 years ago as a regional marketing manager based out of the UK. Looking after the North EMEA region. A couple of years back, I moved into an EMEA-wide role focusing on account-based marketing. Essentially, Cloudera is a technology company. We offer data management software, and our customers use us through a data management platform in order to do analytics and AI on large volumes of data across many different sources.
So let's focus on account-based marketing, which you've identified as your area of strength. To get this section started off, could you define it for our audience? What is account-based marketing?
Thank you. Yeah, so I think there are lots of definitions out there. There's an organization called the ITSMA who specialize in account-based marketing. They've got a really succinct definition that I use internally. But I think the key thing for me is that, really ABM or account-based marketing is a strategic approach to marketing. And I think that really manifests in three ways. The first for me is alignment with sales. And I think you have to drive that connection with the sales team, with the account teams. I think the second thing is to make sure that it's very insight-driven marketing. So what you want to do is be looking at a very specific account or group of accounts. And I think the more that you can get to know the needs and challenges those accounts face, the better your account-based marketing activities will be. And I think the third thing is how that kind of manifests in actual activity. And I think that's to make sure that any kind of campaigns, content or activity that you run with these accounts comes back to that insight that you've gained, and it helps to resonate with those accounts. So I think a bit of a long-winded answer to the question, but I think for me that's really how it plays out.
And can it be implemented by any type of company, or is it more useful for business-to-business companies?
I think it's typically a business-to-business thing, and I think the reason for that is the buying behavior, right? So when an individual buys a product, they tend to be the sole decision maker, or at least the decision making unit, if you like, of a family or whatever that might be, is a lot smaller. When you're targeting large enterprise organizations, as we do at Cloudera, you're typically talking, upwards to 20 plus people that can be involved in that decision.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the account base and really getting a deep understanding of those different parts of an organization and different people that are involved in that decision-making process is why it makes more sense from a B2B point of view. Okay. I guess there's probably a B2C equivalent, but it's probably not account-based. I'd say it's probably customer-based. And I think there's a lot of great stuff we can learn from B2C in terms of customer experience.
Definitely. So your recommendation would be for marketers to use ABM when they're working within a large corporation, or at least trying to target large corporates, and always within the B2B sphere?
I think typically, yeah. I mean, I think for me, the way B2B marketing has always been set up is, marketing supports sales. That's changing a bit. I think, the customer is going to the wider world to find out about products and services before they engage with sales more and more. It has been that way for a while, ever since the internet really came about. And I think, there's just so much opportunity to understand what people are looking for and what their needs and pain points are before you engage with them. So I think a lot of it is about educating the wider team and working with that account team to understand the account, the relationship, etc., before you engage and when you're engaging. So that's how I see it. I think, to be honest with you, marketing is a little bit, B2B marketing is a little bit catching up with sales here. Sales has been account focused for a long time. You'll have an account manager dedicated to a set number of accounts, but marketers tend to have hundreds of accounts under their radar that they're trying to tackle at one time. And I think we need to start thinking a bit more focused in the way that sales has for some time in B2B.
So I understand you're working very closely, obviously, with your sales department. We will touch upon that later in our interview. But I do first want to talk about the first steps towards creating an account-based marketing strategy.
Yeah, it's interesting. I had a conversation with a peer at another company, and I think the first thing I would call out is it's not easy, right? I think a lot of B2B marketers are doing ABM for the first time or just starting out on that journey. And I think even for myself and my colleagues, we're kind of 2 years into it in EMEA at Cloudera, and how we're doing ABM within the field marketing team there. Our corporate team has been doing ABM in a different way through demand generation for quite some time in digital marketing. But what we're looking at really is that more kind of one-to-one ABM, where we're looking at specific accounts and helping the sales team to build better relationships and grow the business in those accounts. And you're always learning new things. I'd say for me, in terms of the first steps, it's just being really clear about what you want to achieve. Why are you even looking at account-based marketing in the first place? I think the next thing is to set some real milestones and goals to achieve, and try and agree them as soon as possible with sales and with sales leadership. Because I think if you get their support and you show that there's value to be had from a sales point of view through account-based marketing, that helps tremendously. So I think that there's a whole lot more than that. And I think the way you've got to look at ABM it's a way of being strategic with marketing. So it is about strategy. So a lot of the work with ABM is in the planning, to be honest. So just being really clear about what your goals are, and then setting out how you want to achieve that, and bringing people on that journey with you is what I would say.
Okay. You have spoken about your sales team very often throughout this interview. So I do want to address this topic. What is the relationship between an ABM marketer and their sales team?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one team, really. I mean, it sounds a bit cliche, but we work very collaboratively. It's not a kind of marketing and sales. It's just one team, right? We're all part of an account team. I might be involved in a number of different accounts, but I'm certainly a part of that team that works on that account. And I think we really do work well with our different teams. It's not just sales and marketing. There's other aspects as well, like customer success, professional services. We have like inside sales representatives as well. We work very closely with. There's lots of different parts of the business that come together to target our customers and talk to our customers. Because I think for us, we've got a lot of customers, a lot of really good customers, and a lot of exciting use cases on the platform. We just want to make sure that we're sharing that with the accounts and the people in the accounts, so they're aware of what's possible with data and with Cloudera, because I think there's just so much opportunity out there at the moment to use data for good.
Okay. What about the relationship between account-based marketing and inbound marketing? Because earlier on in our conversation, you were touching upon how important it is to create value for your audience as well through thought leadership or different types of content that will create trust in your brand. And that sounds a lot to me like inbound marketing. So could you talk to me about the relationship between the two?
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to hear what your view of inbound marketing is, because it's one of those terms as well that I hear a lot, and I'm not 100% clear on what the definition of inbound marketing would be, to be honest. So it'd be great to understand a bit more about what you mean there, and then I can happy to align ABM.
Okay, yeah, no, definitely. So for me, inbound marketing is based on marketing methods that attract leads to a company through material based on their interests. So for example, events, webinars, social media marketing, blogs, etc. So it's really content that provides value to your audience and to your potential clients.
Yeah, I mean, I think It's interesting. I think for me, ABM is all about that. So I'm not surprised there's a synergy. I think the whole purpose of account-based marketing is to understand an account, a customer, a client, try and relate what you do to help solve those problems, and then produce campaigns, activities that resonate with people who need to know about what you do in order to help them solve problems. So in terms of kind of what we do activity wise, we run a lot of campaigns on LinkedIn, for example, LinkedIn advertising campaigns where we are segmenting audiences using LinkedIn's demographic tools, which are pretty comprehensive. We look at things like people's member skills to get an idea of what their interests are. So we'll look at the account, what the people's interests are, how that aligns with the content that we have, and then we'll serve that content to those people. So, yeah, I mean, I think marketing has a habit. I think it's probably because we're in marketing of creating labels for different things. But for me, good marketing has always been about resonating with the customer's needs. I've done courses several years ago that said that, and I don't think they called it inbound marketing or ABM, but that at the core of what marketing is, right? Find out what the customer wants and needs are, find out what your products and services are, and then find the meeting point in the middle of how those come together, and then target those people with different activities and tactics. So that's how I would answer that question.
Okay. So it looks like I also am in inbound marketing, not necessarily account-based marketing, but inbound marketing. And I do our company creates several thought pieces so that our potential clients also trust our brand and are able to learn more about our areas of strength and our expertise as well. We don't do it through paid advertisement, though. We are generally a very organic type of company. Our approach is organic marketing. So I do want to ask you about the value that account-based marketing provides to a computer software company.
Yeah, I think probably comes back to the point I made earlier around the number of people that you have to reach, right? And if you step right back, you have typically an account team. At Cloudera, we have one account manager. I know other companies will have more account managers that tackle one account. But typically we go after big global enterprises, with hundreds of thousands of employees, and for one person and like a small team that work with them to try and target and reach that account across the different decision makers that are in that account, it's very difficult. So I think with ABM, it helps expand that reach, looking at how we can help them communicate wider across the account, how we can help them think about the ways to make messages resonate better with that account, is really what we do there.
And then how are you measuring the results of that? Because obviously you have to engage with several different representatives from the same company, because large companies of hundreds of thousands of employees tend to have a lot of bureaucracy involved as well when purchasing a new technology or involving themselves in a new product.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think measurement is a perennial challenge for B2B marketing, right? And I think marketing attribution, marketing measurement is something that we always are challenged with. I think so. When we look at measurement, we tend to look at the same measurement metrics that we always have done. So we look at things like the number of engagements and interactions from specific accounts with our activities, but we also look at things like how we're engaging with people through various channels. So we look at social media, how we're getting engagements there, typically through our paid advertising activity. We do a lot of organic things as well, but that typically comes out of our corporate engine. So where we're doing specific things, we're looking at how many people are visiting our site based off our advertising. I think the big thing for us is always about pipeline and how we're influencing and sourcing pipeline through marketing. And we look at typical metrics for that. We have targets that we set at the outset, and we look at how that's changing over time. We have CRM, we have all of the other tools that most B2B marketers have to track those kinds of things. I think the other thing we've looked at is, I mentioned earlier the ITSMA. I think, they have a framework which they call the 3 Rs for measuring account-based marketing. That's relationship, reputation, and revenue. So we try and align to that, but a lot of the things that we do anyway from a measurement point of view align naturally with those 3 Rs. And I think for us, we focus heavily on relationships. We work with the sales team very closely to identify who are the right people that we need to reach. Are they people we know already? Are they people that we need to engage with for the first time? And then we work out plans to get to that point. I think reputation is a much more challenging one for ABM, because there's so much outside of the world of account-based marketing that can change a reputation for a company. So we look more about, who are those people that we talked about previously, and what do they currently view about Cloudera? What's their current thoughts and opinions? Do we know? Can we go and find out what they think about that, or if they're working with our competition? Mm-hmm. For us, revenue is predominantly pipeline from a marketing point of view. We are starting to see revenue direct from marketing through the adoption of cloud technology. So people are downloading and consuming software automatically without being involved with the sales team. So there is that kind of direct to revenue market now in B2B, which is quite interesting. But I think for us, revenue is more about building pipeline, building opportunities for the sales teams to go and close.
One thing that I would add to your response is regional maturity. So whereas Europe tends to be very mature from a B2B corporate standpoint, Asia is steps behind in terms of digital transformation. And although the technology buyer, in this case, computer software buyer, might be facing the same type of challenges, each region is coming at it from a completely different angle. So from a marketing standpoint, how do you or would you cater for different market maturity levels?
Yeah, I mean, ABM is all about resonating with specific accounts, right? So, of course we do. We have an ABM lead in APAC, Asia Pacific, based out of Singapore. I would argue that in some places digital transformation is ahead in Asia Pacific, based on some of the examples I've seen. And if you think about some markets like Singapore, they're incredibly advanced with some of the things they're doing with digital. So it varies, right? It varies region to region. It varies country to country. I think for us, that's really where ABM comes in, because you're starting to think about things in a much more micro environment. So you're not looking at regions and markets. You're looking at one company and how different divisions within that company are working with things like data and how they're driving digital transformation. So that is something I couldn't agree more with in terms of being bespoke and being tailored to markets is paramount.
Okay, so your advice to other marketers out there would be, when it comes to ABM marketing from region to region, would be really to zoom into your potential clients on the field rather than focus on a region as a whole. And we can see the same thing in the EMEA region, because obviously what works in Spain may not work in the UK, but what works in my company might not work in another company within the same market. So your approach is much more about having one-to-one conversations, bilateral conversations, understanding your potential clients, and really catering to their specific needs rather than just putting them all in the same boat, right? All of your clients in the same boat.
That's right. I mean, I think, you have to do that kind of more general approach as well. Don't get me wrong. It's not just don't just go for ABM and don't do anything else, right? So you have to think about that market, that wider market. But I think typically where ABM works well is when you've got a really clear proposition, right, for a specific account or a specific group of accounts that you're confident in. You might have done it before in other places. So it works, and then it's how you kind of then look at other areas that you can do the same thing elsewhere, right? So I think for me, ABM is just really driving best practice in a lot of cases, right? You're just thinking about where can we get the most value back from the efforts we put in, right? So if we target a whole market, we might get some accounts showing interest, but within that market we might have an already good idea and we can test it with some research before we go ahead and start. which accounts or which types of accounts might engage with us to begin with. I think the other thing from ABM is it's not always just one-to-one, right? It can be a group of accounts with common needs, and that can be things like vertical sectors, but it can even be specific areas of a business or of your own product stack. So, we sometimes look at specific campaigns for people within data science roles, within certain company sizes. And that it's just really looking at how you can segment your audience to put the efforts and the resource and time that you spend as a marketer into the right places.
Mm-hmm. I do want to focus a little bit on inbound marketing because it's my area of strength, and I'm seeing a lot of overlap between inbound marketing and ABM. So HubSpot says it can take about 6 months to see substantial results from inbound marketing efforts, which I'm assuming is also a similar timeline when it comes to account-based marketing efforts as well. So how do you justify a 6-month cycle in order to close a deal to your management team?
I think, for us, deal cycles tend to be fairly long, right? Where it is shortening again with the kind of birth of cloud. You do tend to get quicker wins, but typically we're looking at large enterprises, big decisions to make, right? Big decisions to make in terms of which data platforms to use for their strategy, and data is really like paramount to pretty much every large enterprise in the world right now because it's such a valuable resource for companies. So I think I would agree that the value of ABM does take time. It's strategic. That means it needs thinking, it needs planning, it needs work, it needs that kind of stuff. But at the same time, we have been able to demonstrate really good quick wins with account-based marketing. I'll try and share an example without giving away any company names because that could get me in trouble. But we had a customer based out of Europe who had bought user licenses for a part of our software, not the whole thing, but it's part of our data science remit, and they bought a specific number of user licenses for that product. But we had a meeting with the sales team and heard that actually they weren't using the product. There was no consumption. Our champion there said that, look, he'd done a couple of internal workshops, but the data science community within that account weren't really showing interest. So we came together with the account team and we talked about putting together a virtual event or a webinar, more or less, for that account and working with our champion to promote that internally. And we had, I think it was 67 people within the data science community of that account sign up for this webinar within a 3-week period. We ran that webinar successfully. Obviously, all 67 didn't attend. I think we ended up with around 30 to 40 attendees. But after that, people did start to use the software and did start to use the platform. And we started to get feedback and some really positive feedback about what it could do as well and how it helped them deliver. So that was quite a short time frame, right? It came about after a meeting with the sales team and just understanding where they were getting stuck at that point in time. And then we thought about how we might be able to help that from a marketing perspective. And we working collaboratively as a team, we managed to pull something off in a fairly short time frame. So, yeah, I mean, if you're looking at the kind of multi-million-dollar multi-year renewal type stuff, yes, that's going to take time, but there's some quick wins that you can get along the way that helps to get people on board with the idea.
As you mentioned, I also think it's a great example of why it's so important for sales and marketing teams to be in constant communication. I've seen that oftentimes throughout my interviews that marketing acts alone and independently from sales, whereas I've always been an advocate of both departments working as a team, as you've been mentioning throughout this interview, because really marketing is what you do to drive sales and sales is there to close the deal. So if both departments aren't communicating with each other and working with each other, the strategy is not going to work.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Yeah, it's always been pretty good at Cloudera, I have to say. We've always had a very collaborative relationship, and that helps, I think. Excellent.
Well, that's music to my ears. We are moving into a rapid fire set of questions, which is basically your recommendation to our audience. To get this section started off, I I'd like to ask you about your source of inspiration. So an influencer or a professional role model.
That's a good question. I think, there's, I think for me, colleagues that I've worked with over the years, I definitely take inspiration from many colleagues and in different roles as well. I think not always marketers, right? There's people in sales team that I look up to, for example. I've had pretty good managers over the years as well that I've been able to learn from. My brother is actually a marketer as well.
Oh.
He's currently a CMO at a fintech. So, he's someone that I've always kind of shared ideas with, probably in a more informal way than you might expect for a typical kind of mentor influencer type relationship. But, he's someone that I've definitely looked up to and tried to emulate in many ways.
Well, let's give him a little shout out. What's his name?
Well, his surname's the same, of course, but his first name's Rory.
Rory O'Neill, that's a shout out from your brother on how you have influenced his life. I'm sure he'll love that. Okay, moving into a recommended book or publication.
Difficult one. I to be honest, I don't look at too many non-fiction. I studied English at university, and I think I've always kind of liked to read fictional material ever since. And I don't read a lot of non-fiction, and I keep being recommended stuff, and I have them on my list of things to read, but never get there. So if I'm able to recommend a fictional book, I did just finish a book called American Gods, which is it is also a TV show on Amazon Prime, which some people might have seen. But the book it was a challenging read. There's a lot of detail about gods and goddesses through time, which can be hard to keep up with. And it's one of those things where you have to do research while you read it. But I think at the end it was actually a really good book, and definitely helps you escape from the day to day, which is what I love about reading.
Yes, mental sanity. Mental health is a new buzzword, especially during Corona times. So anything that allows one to break away from anything that can cause stress and just give them a little break is obviously definitely recommendable, especially now during the health crisis. Okay, and to finish this section up, and also the last question of today's interview, will be your favorite app at the moment and why?
Favorite app? Yeah, I am. Well, I've been using a collection of apps from Adidas actually recently, and it's not really related to B2B or what I do as a day job, but I think Adidas do a really good job of connecting their retail app with their training apps. So they've got a running app, they've got a training app for like home workouts, which is very good at the moment as well, of course. But it also links with the retail app. So when you go for a run or when you do training using the training app, it does add points to their loyalty program, which can end up in discounts on the Adidas retail app, which, if you like buying Adidas gear, which I quite like, it's like an added value win. And obviously it does everything else that a normal app would do, in terms of helping you to see products and reviews and that kind of thing too. But I think it's pretty a neat way of doing it. And I think in terms of kind of customer experience, customer loyalty, I think there's a lot that B2B can learn from B2C, I think, in the marketing field. And I think as that kind of converges more and more, with the kind of birth of kind of the cloud model, allowing enterprises to buy, B2B products and services in a much more B2C manner, I think that kind of thing is quite exciting in the B2B space and where that will grow.
Yeah, I agree with you. At the B2B space, at the end of the day, one always has to keep in mind that on the other side of a company or on the other side of the screen, there's always a human. So you are having human to human conversations, although you're a company selling to a different company. But I think it's really important to always relate with your customer and keep in mind that your customer is a human being. That will be the person buying your product.
It's very true. Although one day it probably will be robots buying stuff as well.
I don't know. I'm watching Humans on Amazon Prime, and I'm kind of like on the edge right now. Like, oh, I hope a robot doesn't steal my job. Okay. Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining us today on the Content Mix. It was an absolute pleasure to have you here and to learn about your experience in account-based marketing, Ross. I really enjoyed our conversation, and I look forward to keeping in touch.
No, it's great. Thanks very much for the invitation. Always good to talk about these things. I think I like to look at these things online as well. So hopefully that was interesting for people who are watching, who are getting started with ABM and working on it at the moment.
Very interesting indeed, Ross. I learned a lot myself because I'm not an expert in ABM marketing, and just being able to pick your brain on the ins and outs of what I would have to do should I implement a strategy like this was extremely useful. So thank you again for joining us on the Content Mix. And to everyone listening in today, thank you so much for joining us on the Content Mix as well. For more perspectives on the content marketing industry in Europe, check out the Content Mix. We'll be releasing interviews just like this one every week, so keep on tuning in. Thanks again, and see you next time. Bye.